Brooklyn Independent Television.
Coming up on Brooklyn Review.
Accountability, NYPD needs accountability. NYPD needs accountability.
The landlord at 245 Sullivan Place has been labeled one of the worst in New York City, but the owners are disputing that allegation. I'm Sherry Karabin, and coming up on Brooklyn Review, I'll take you inside the building and bring you their story.
Everything old is new again. We're in Crown Heights, a last century building that's ready for a 21st century update. We'll have these stories and more next. Welcome to the first Brooklyn Review of 2012. I'm Brian Vines. It's a distinction that no landlord wants, but Public Advocate Bill DeBlasio labeled the owner of the building at 245 Sullivan Place in Brooklyn one of the worst landlords in New York City. He says there are over 600 cumulative violations, the most of any apartment in Brooklyn. However, those who run the building say there's a lot more to the story than meets the eye. Sherry Karabin paid a visit to the building and brings us the owner side of the story.
I don't believe that. It can't be the worst building. Look at it.
Caretaker Albert Whitaker speaks out about the recent negative publicity leveled against the landlord at 245 Sullivan Place in Crown Heights. Public Advocate Bill DeBlasio listed the building as the one with the most cumulative violations in Brooklyn on his New York City Worst Landlords watch list in 2011.
It's important that everyone understand that these are not Department of Buildings violations. These are HPD violations, heat, hot water. They're not violations related to code, but quality of life.
The Public Advocate's list shows over 600 violations. But Whitaker, who lives and works in the building, says the Public Advocate's report doesn't tell the whole story.
He's fixing it. Look at the apartments they fixing and everything. This can't be the worst building. I see worse better than this. I mean worse, okay? Like in the Bronx, East New York, so this can't be the worst building. So to admit that survey, I think they got it backwards.
Indeed, the owners say many of the more serious problems have been corrected.
The people are working outside diligently. They're getting an intercom system. They're getting locks on the door. These are the things, the security issues, the lighting issues. There's so many other issues, but the heating is number one. Everyone has heat. Everyone has hot water.
Gloria Henderson is the business manager for Maristank Corp. and the daughter of the owner, Stanley Crossman. She says Crossman is elderly and his health prevented him from coming to the site. But she and several other family members took Brooklyn Review on a tour of the building to show the progress that has been made.
This is not a Band-Aid system. We're replacing. We're not just repairing, we're replacing. This was the lighting that they said that needed to be repaired. There's the lighting there.
Brand new bathroom right here.
Replacing a new tenant into here.
Yeah.
There are 40 apartments in the building, but about half are vacant. And the owners say many of the tenants are not paying their rent.
I'm not saying that we're blameless. There are issues in the building that need to be taken care of. But when you have a building that's 50% occupied and 40% of the tenants aren't paying rent, aren't willing to work with you, it's really difficult. You can't gain entry to the apartments to make the repairs because they're not paying rent, so they really don't want to communicate with you. They're calling down to HPD with their violations, which is fine, but we're willing to take care of them, and they're not allowing us to do that.
But the owner's troubles go back much further. The family says several years ago, Crossman tried to sell the building. Although the sale never went through, it led to a long court dispute over the ownership of the property. They say he also hired a building manager who stole the rent he collected and allowed the problems to increase. In 2008, Maristank Corp. Received a Department of Housing Preservation and Development, or HPD, mortgage, so it could remove lead as well as make repairs and renovations to the apartments and public areas in the building. The family says the court case caused a major delay in the release of this money. And even now that the problems have been resolved, HPD has yet to give them the full amount of the loan.
We call HPD, they say the person to release the money is on vacation. When is he coming back? We have no idea, so we're still out of fund trying to fix what needs to be fixed. So if HPD was interested in cleaning up the building, they would give us the loan that they promised us to clean up the property. All of this was supposed to be done with the loan that we were supposed to get from HPD. Paint the whole thing, clean up everything, all of this.
I don't know the particulars, but I do know I don't want to engage in blaming the victim. There's over 600 violations and HPD violations at this building, and obviously it had to have taken some time to accrue all of these violations. Created the law which would establish that HPD would inspect all buildings, not for just one violation, but for all violations from the roof to the cellar. And so I had a conversation with HPD. We outlined all of the violations. We've notified the landlord, and if the landlord fails to correct these violations, HPD will step in and correct these violations and find and bill the landlord appropriately.
In fact, HPD contractors have come in to make repairs, and Henderson says it was a disaster.
This is how HPD left this place. They just walked out one day and they left. This is how they left it. We could never do this. They said they were going to replace the tubs and whatnot. And this is what the contractors are working on rehabbing, because nobody wants to be in a building with these kind of places.
What's the average rent that someone in this building is paying?
I'd say no more than $350. $350 because it is a stabilized building. However, they've been given no increases. No one has ever gone down there because of the issues that are plaguing the building, so the landlord has not gone down there for any increments.
Although none of the tenants who have filed complaints approached Brooklyn Review while we were in the building, this woman, who did not wish to be identified, allowed us inside. She's lived in the building for about 30 years and is in one of the newly remodeled apartments.
I don't have problem, I don't cause problem, I don't create problem.
And you've never had any problems here?
If I have it, my landlord took care of it years ago.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
When you do the right thing follows you. No myself. You want a better place than this?
I think it's nice.
You think it's nice, right? That's how you keep it.
For now, the owners say they'll continue to make repairs and do whatever is necessary to remove their name from the watch list.
Everyone is working hard at getting this building reestablished. You know, we only want not just the community, but all the powers that be to come together to see it as a reality and make it happen. You know, not just do the blame game.
This is Sherry Karabin reporting for Brooklyn Review.
Brooklyn Review contacted the city's Department of Housing Preservation and Development to see why the owners hadn't received the full amount of the HPD loan as of yet. Spokesman Eric Biederman issued the following statement. Due to litigation by a third party which put the ownership of the building in question, we were not able to advance the loan funds until that lawsuit was settled. With the litigation recently resolved, we are ready to resume payments as soon as the current owner is able to present a plan to restart construction on the major systems at the building. We are determined to get this project rehabilitation on track so that the tenants can look forward to safe, clean homes they deserve. We'll keep you posted as the story develops. Now, speaking of renovations, in this tight economy, most of us are learning to do the best we can with what we have. The same logic already applies to a development at several massive Armory buildings that have been transferred from federal oversight to state rule and finally to the city of New York. This week, Borough President Marty Markowitz sponsored an open house at an Armory and a meeting where community members gave their ideas for making the buildings viable.
New York City is home to more than 70 armories, most of them imposing castle-like structures built to train and house local units of the New York State Volunteer Militia. Since the early 1900s, some of the buildings have fallen into disrepair, while others have become showplaces, like Manhattan's Lexington Avenue Armory, where the Victoria's Secret fashion show is staged. Away from the flashbulbs, two of Brooklyn's armories have still found their way into the spotlight. The Armory on Bedford Street at Atlantic Avenue is a homeless men's intake center. Local residents mobilized against a plan to make the Armory New York City's primary men's intake shelter, saying the neighborhood is already home to more homeless and transitional housing services than nearly any other community in the city.
I love them. I'm not saying that they should not be cared for or have a place to live, but they need a permanent place to live with supportive services. Can Bedford-Stuyvesant or Crown Heights provide the services with the infrastructure we have now to give them what they need?
On the other end of the spectrum, Park Slope's 8th Avenue Armory weathered decades of neglect until a $16 million renovation took it from this to this.
I want everyone to look around you at this beautiful new Park Slope Armory YMCA and think about how wonderful it would be for the residents and family and children of this neighborhood. I'm proud to have played a role in getting this done. And there is absolutely no reason that the residents of Central Brooklyn, which is home to two gorgeous, massive, and underutilized armories, should not have the very same amenities. As Borough President, I'll be allocating $1 million to each one to get the ball rolling, and I promise you I will not rest until the Bedford Atlantic Armory in Crown Heights and the Sumner Avenue Armory in Bedford-Stuyvesant look just like this.
Ted Frank is the senior construction manager at the city's Department of Construction and Design and was the lead on the project.
We had to maintain the landmarks status of the exterior of the building. And on the interior, we had to conform to building codes, fire and sprinkler. The building never had any sprinklers. We had to incorporate a sprinkler system into the building. If you look, that stepped pipe system, this floor is completely sprinkled. It has a smoke purge system. It's ADA compliant. It has an ADA elevator. These were all design elements that had to be addressed just to be compliant with local codes. So that was a major challenge right from the get-go, and still maintain the landmark status of the building. And it's also about 110-year-old building.
Now Crown Heights is getting ready for the treatment. That is, the Armory at Bedford and Union. Built in 1904, the Armory was home to Troop C, a cavalry based in Brooklyn that served in the Spanish-American War. Now their old stomping ground may be a new community hub. Retired U.S. Congressman Major Owens took advantage of an open house at the Armory and created a teachable moment.
Now teach a course at Medgar on proposal writing, and my class wanted to write a proposal as to what to do with this, so we started as of last January trying to get more information about what was going on here, and have not been able to get information. We were able to sneak in here one day for about 20 minutes, and that was most of it. But I'm happy to see that Marty Markowitz is now taking the steps to help us open up the place and everybody can see it. And I hope that it's still an open situation as to what's going to happen to it.
Today is the start. It's not the end. It's just the beginning for Bedford Union Armory Revitalization Project. I want to make sure you know that nothing happens overnight. The Armory in Park Slope, that was over a decade in making happen. Let's hope it doesn't take anywhere that time. The good news is the Park Slope Armory was the first one that we did in Brooklyn, and so with the experience we have with that, we'll be able to expedite the process here in our neighborhood.
And so today we are here because the Borough President said we want to hear from all of you. But our number one objective, what is driving this conversation, is to give it back to the community so that young people can engage and have a constructive place to go after school as opposed to being on our corners. No more violence in Crown Heights, no more violence in Bedford-Stuyvesant, no more children hanging out with nothing to do because we've closed their bowling alleys. We closed all of the roller skating rink, right? Remember that rally? Bowling alley, roller skating ring, We closed the movie theater, their after center, their after school center. They have no place to go. And so now we have a responsibility so that these children, our children, can engage in constructive activities.
And there was no shortage of ideas for those.
There's archives that can be put in there that can teach our children. It's more than just having a place for them to go play. We want a place for them to learn and grow and prepare them for what they have to face.
I definitely would like to focus on is for our seniors in our neighborhood. We definitely need a place that, every block has their senior organization, but it's time to get all the seniors in this neighborhood together as one.
Gotham Girls Roller Derby is very excited about this blank canvas opportunity to create a flexible, spectator-friendly, intimate amateur sport venue where New York's athletes can really bring something special and world-class to this neighborhood.
Urban planning master's students from NYU's Wagner School of Public Service will compile the ideas and have a report by the spring. With Borough President Markowitz and Councilmember James having already secured $14 million for the Armory at Bedford and Atlantic, and initiating the conversion of the Sumner Avenue Armory in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn's militia history is poised to march right into the future. For Brooklyn Review, I'm Brian Vines.
Just because you may have missed the meeting doesn't mean that you can't share your ideas. If you have some thoughts about the Armory and how it could best be used, get in touch with the Borough President's office at bkarmoryproject@gmail.com. Now in northern Brooklyn, there's at least one more project where residents are calling for broader community input. The Broadway Triangle is at the cross-section of Williamsburg and Bedford-Stuyvesant. The argument isn't over the fact that affordable housing is planned for the area, but just who's going to benefit from the process that some believe lacks transparency at best, and at worst is blatantly discriminatory. Here again is Sherry Karabin.
I want a do-over. That's how Broadway Triangle Community Coalition member Anita Dunbar feels about the current plan to rezone a 9-block portion of the Broadway Triangle urban renewal area in Williamsburg. The New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development proposal would include approximately 18 acres, bounded by Flushing and Throop Avenues, Lynch Street, Union Avenue, Walton Street, and Harrison Avenue. The proposed rezoning would allow for new residential and commercial uses in the currently industrial area and calls for more than 1,800 new apartments to be built, about 905 of which would be affordable.
At every point of revision of this plan so far, there's been so much insider power that the process has been flawed. It was flawed because the community wasn't involved.
On September 9th, members of the more than 40-group Broadway Triangle Community Coalition made sure the city heard their voices, filing a lawsuit in Manhattan Supreme Court. The suit alleges the current plan violates the Federal Fair Housing Act as well as state and city human rights laws, since large portions of the area's minority residents were left out of the negotiations that led to the current proposal.
The city has been discriminatory against the African American, the Latinos, and even the Hasidic community. That there's a big portion of the Hasidic community has been left out. A majority of the Latino and African Americans have been left out of the process, and we feel that the city has developed a plan that does not include the needs of the entire community.
While the blocks where the changes will take effect are in Williamsburg, the area borders Bushwick and Bedford-Stuyvesant. Residents in those communities were not consulted, and neither was Bedford-Stuyvesant's Community Board 3. According to the lawsuit, the failure to consult Community Board 3 is a violation of the city's land use law.
I live in Bed-Stuy. We do have a say in this. What you put across the street from me is going to affect me. So we should have been consulted. We should have been allowed to be involved in the planning.
Although just about everyone agrees the area is in desperate need of affordable housing, the coalition believes a lot more housing could and should go up, especially on the city-owned land which sits on Throop Avenue. They say the trouble is the new zoning caps building heights at 8 stories, which supporters say is necessary so that they fit in with the surrounding area. But opponents charge that argument doesn't make sense, since much taller buildings already border two sides of the triangle. So right now they're proposing 1,800 units, and you say if they go a little bit higher, they can maybe do 3,600?
Yes.
Critics say adding insult to injury is the fact that the city has already made deals with the Ridgewood Bushwick Senior Citizens Council and the United Jewish Organizations of Williamsburg to develop the land without taking bids from others. Both are connected to Assemblyman Vito Lopez, and the Broadway Triangle plan is considered to be one of Lopez's pet projects. Opponents add that the housing that will go up will contain a large number of 3- and 4-bedroom apartments as a result of UJO's efforts to cater to its members.
Most people now don't need 3- and 4-, 5-bedroom apartments because we don't have that many children. So that's geared to UJO, who cannot ride an elevator during the Sabbath. So making a building 6 to 8 stories high allows them to be able to function, all right? But this area needs the most affordable housing it can get.
Brooklyn Review contacted both UJO and the Ridgewood Bushwick Senior Citizens Council, but no one from either organization returned the calls. Coalition members have other concerns that don't pertain to these two organizations. They say since the city only owns land on one of the blocks, the rezoning will essentially give a free ride to private property owners on the other blocks, and they'll likely put up luxury housing and force more longtime residents out. And that's not all.
The plan that HPD has does not add one park, one open space or green area. To add 1,000 new people and not have open space is completely irresponsible.
Housing Preservation and Development spokesman Eric Biederman declined to comment on the plan, saying it's HPD's policy not to discuss matters where there is pending litigation. Coalition members aren't the only ones upset by the proposal. The plan also calls for the city to relocate area businesses, including acquiring the block where Shanghai Stainless Product and Design Co. is located. Ernie Wong and his father have been at the same location for about 20 years, and Wong worries about what being forced to move will do to the company.
They have intentions of relocating me, but nothing's concrete. There's no set location where I'm going to be going, nothing. In 1989, we made our first coffee cart, and then from 1989 and so forth, we started making more of these units. I think relocating me wouldn't be that difficult, but relocating me so that it won't disrupt any business, that's more of the difficult challenge.
So far, the proposed rezoning has been approved by Community Board 1 as well as Borough President Marty Markowitz, who offered his own set of recommendations, including the addition of about 150 units of affordable housing, increased open space, a plan to keep the local businesses in the borough, as well as a requirement that the housing built on the city's property remains affordable forever.
I understand their concerns that they would have liked to have greater input, and by the way, my office would have liked to as well, to tell you the truth, but sometimes things don't work out that way. And we can only respond to the plans that are submitted to us. We found a lot of good things in Broadway Triangle, and that's why I approved it.
To go forward, the proposal still needs a green light from both the City Planning Commission and the City Council. In the meantime, coalition members are hoping their lawsuit can bring a halt to the process before it's approved and send the entire plan back to the drawing board so their ideas can be included. Reporting for Brooklyn Review, I'm Sherry Karabin.
Since that report first aired in September of 2009, the lawsuit filed by the activists was stalled in court for more than 2 years. But last week, State Supreme Court Judge Emily Jane Goodman stopped the project when she ruled that there can be no compliance with the Fair Housing Act where defendants never analyzed the impact of the community preference. Of the New York court ruling, Congressman Nydia Velázquez said, "The court's ruling sends a clear message not only that our community is opposed to this ill-conceived development plan, but the current scheme is discriminatory and illegal. The city needs to go back to the drawing board and work in a transparent, inclusive manner to develop a proposal that is fair to all residents of North Brooklyn." In another statement, City Council member Steve Levin said, The Broadway Triangle is an important area in my district, and while I respect the court, this decision is very disappointing, not only to me, but to all Williamsburg residents who are desperate for affordable housing in the neighborhood. Brooklyn Review will continue to report on the developments on the development as they develop. Now, New York City Council member Jumaane Williams has a New Year's resolution for the New York Police Department: more accountability. On the first weekend of the new year, Councilmember Williams and other elected officials gathered at Grand Army Plaza to send a message to the mayor and police commissioner that the community is ready to work with the police to build safer streets for everyone. Our cameras were there.
NYPD needs accountability. NYPD needs accountability. NYPD needs accountability.
For some reason, the press never plays this part when I say it, but this is not an anti-NYPD rally. This is not an NYPD rally, not an anti-NYPD rally. We are so thankful for the many men and women who are dawn blue and want to serve the community, who wake up every day and want to make our community better. People like Officer Fugowski, whose life was taken, for all accounts was a great police officer. You walked to that precinct, he treated you like a human being, and he answered the call to help someone, and his life was taken, tragically. So an officer today was hurt on Cortelyou in Dorchester, doing routine, I know they don't like to use routines, but things that are assumed to be routine in their day-to-day job, risk their lives every day. What this is a pro-better policing and safer streets rally. This is a pro-better policing and safer streets rally. We can have those conversations at the same time and still want our NYPD to be community office. So the police officers that are here, can we give them a round of applause, please, for the job that they do in keeping this community safe?
They have a job to do that's necessary, but they've got to do it right. They've got to do it by the book. And whether it's the a totally unwarranted arrest of Councilman Williams and Mr. Foy that happened at the West Indian Day Parade, whether it's the stop and frisk, which I think, you know, the way it's implemented ends up being really racist in terms of the communities that get affected. I mean, I walk home, you know, my kids when they were younger and lived in the neighborhood could walk home. No cop was going to stop them. You end up with marijuana arrests, mostly of black and Latino youth, even though there's more white youth using marijuana. It's just completely unfair. And then on top of that, you've got things like the, you know, random Muslim community spying. You've got people doing peaceful protests like at Grand Central the other day, where people were just calling out chants and they got arrested for it. Now, what's free speech if you can't speak and you get arrested for speaking in a large public place? You've got reporters getting arrested for doing their job. So it's all of these things together. And the solution is that they need to be held accountable for doing things by the book.
Unless the 99% has receives justice, the 1% will never know peace. And we need the city of New York, to understand clearly, this is not a fly-by-night rally movement. You know, we just come together because we're angry right now. What you are seeing now is a bubbling up, a springing up, an uprising of the masses of the people of the city of New York who are going to speak to the 1% and their leader, Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
I'm sure that there's other ways of identifying yourself as a police officer or even interrogating them than what has been happening. Jumaane Williams' arrest on the West Indian Day Parade was an example of what actually happened, of the miseducation.
Well, that brings the first Brooklyn Review of 2012 to an end, but I'd like to remind you that you can check us out on iTunes, YouTube, tweet us, or visit us at our website at brickartsmedia.org. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at breakartsmedia.org/BIT.